Good evening, traveler. Welcome to the edge of nowhere. Tonight we ride into a forgotten town where silence speaks louder than words and the desert remembers everything. Close your eyes. Let the story take you where the wind never stops and the dust never settles. The sun had already dipped below the hills when the rider appeared. He came without sound, without name, just a long shadow on horseback, dragging a trail of red dust behind him. His coat was worn, his hat pulled low, and his boots had walked more miles than most men ever dreamed of. The town he approached was called Whisper Ridge, though it hadn't whispered in years. Buildings leaned into the wind like old men too tired to stand tall. The saloon doors creaked, though no one pushed them. A rusted bell hung above the sheriff's office. It swayed gently, but made no sound. No dogs, no voices, just the wind, and fences that still remembered what it was like to hold something in. He stepped off the horse slowly. The ground crunched under his boots. Not gravel, not sand, just time, piled up like dust in the corners of the earth. Inside the general store, a lantern burned low. That was the first sign of life. The man stepped through the door. Behind the counter stood an old woman with eyes like dry wells. She didn't flinch, didn't greet him. "You came late," she said. He nodded once. "I always do." She turned without another word, pulled something from beneath the counter, a canteen, a worn journal, and a brass key. "Room's upstairs," she said. "End of the hall. Window faces the desert. If you're lucky, it won't speak tonight." He took the key, nodded once, climbed the stairs with boots that whispered stories to the floorboards. The room was quiet. One bed, one chair, one window, facing forever. He set down the canteen, placed the journal beside it, then opened the window and let the desert breathe in. The wind carried only stillness. He sat in the chair, unbuckled his belt, and laid a revolver on the table. Next to it, a small locket. He opened it slowly. Inside, a faded photo. So old, even the names had blown away. He closed the locket and stared out into the dark. The moon hovered just above the ridge. The hills beyond shimmered like memory. Midnight passed without sound. No owls, no coyotes, just silence. And then the door creaked. It wasn't the wind, and it wasn't the old woman. It was a boy, barefoot, wide-eyed, maybe 12, maybe not real. The boy stared at the man. "You gonna leave like the others?" he asked. The man shook his head. "No." "You gonna stay?" "Not forever." "Why'd you come?" The man looked back out the window. The desert looked different now, silver dust, like the stars had settled into the sand. "To remember," he said. "To forget." By morning, the desert had cooled. The wind no longer whispered, it simply breathed. The rider sat by the window, watching the sun climb slowly over the ridge. The sky turned from silver to pale gold, like someone waking without words. Down below, someone swept the porch of the saloon. The bell above the sheriff's door rang once, not loud, but real. Something had changed, not everything, but something. He gathered his things, the locket, the revolver, the journal left untouched. Downstairs, the old woman stood behind the counter just as before. "You left something," she said, holding the locket in her palm. He looked at it, then shook his head. "No, it's yours now." She She nodded as if she already knew. He stepped outside. The town still leaned into the wind, but now the wind leaned back. He mounted the horse, tugged the brim of his hat low, and turned toward the open trail. Dust rose behind him, a soft cloud, just enough to leave a memory. The old woman stood in the doorway, watching until he vanished into the heat. Then she closed the door, and the bell rang one more time. Whisper Ridge whispered again, not loud, just enough. And so the rider vanished, as quietly as he came. Another ghost in the desert, another whisper in the dust. Sleep now. And if the wind calls your name tonight, don't answer too fast. It might just be telling a story.